3 years ago, I retired a set of garden tools I had been buying and replacing every single season for over 2 decades. I replaced them with 5 hand tools an Amish neighbor helped me build in his workshop. And those 5 tools have now gone through 3 full growing seasons of hard daily use without a single repair. Not one loose handle, not one bent tine, not one cracked grip. Before that, I was spending somewhere around $60 to $80 every spring replacing cheap shovels, hose, and trowels that rusted, snapped, or wobbled apart by August. That adds up to well over $1,000 I threw away on tools that were designed to be disposable. Here is what changed. I was visiting a small Amish community outside of Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, and I stopped by a neighbor's barn where he was rehafting a garden fork. This fork was not new. He told me his grandfather had made the head and his father had put on the second handle. He was now fitting the third handle, and the tool was pushing 70 years old, 70 years on one fork. The steel head looked better than the brand new one I had bought at the hardware store that spring. I asked him why his tools lasted so long, and what he told me over the next few hours completely reset how I think about garden tools. Today, I am going to walk you through exactly how the Amish build garden tools that last generations, not seasons, and how you can start doing the same thing in your own shop or garage. You do not need a blacksmith forge. You do not need expensive equipment. And stay with me to the end, because I will share a simple Amish handle treatment that takes about 10 minutes once a year and is the single biggest reason their wooden handles outlast ours by decades. I have never seen it mentioned in any tool catalog or woodworking guide. Now, I want to be honest about where I started. For most of my gardening life, I treated tools the way most of us do. I walked into a big box store, grabbed whatever trowel or hoe was on the rack for $12 or $15, used it until it broke, and bought another one. I never once thought about what kind of steel was in the blade or what species of wood was in the handle. I definitely never thought about grain orientation or how the head was attached. A tool was a tool. If it broke, that was normal. You just replaced it. If that sounds like you, you are not alone. I was right there for over 20 years. But after spending time around Amish workshops in Lancaster County and later in Holmes County, Ohio, I realized that what I called normal, they would call wasteful. And they would be right. Here is something that helped me understand why the Amish approach tools differently than most of us. Picture an Amish family garden. It is not a small raised bed on a patio. These are large families, 8, 10, 12 people sitting down at one table. Many Amish household gardens run a quarter acre to a full acre, and every square foot needs to produce. That garden feeds the family through the growing season and fills the root, cellar, and canning shelves for winter. The tools that work that ground are in use nearly every day from March through November. Now imagine you cannot drive to a store and buy a replacement whenever something breaks. The Amish do not have that convenience, and even if they could get to a store, spending money on something you could build better yourself goes against a core principle they call Gelassenheit, which roughly means yielding to the natural order, not being wasteful with what you've been given. Waste is not just inefficient, it is a kind of arrogance, an assumption that resources are endless. So when an Amish farmer builds a garden hoe, he is not building it for this season. He is building it for his children and possibly their children. That is not romantic sentiment. That is practical math. When your family depends on that tool and replacing it costs time and money, you cannot spare. You learn to build it right the first time. That mindset is what separates a tool that lasts 3 years from a tool that lasts 100. And here is exactly how they do it. The first thing you need to understand is that not all steel is the same, and the Amish are very particular about what goes into their tool heads. This is where most commercial garden tools fail before they even reach your hands. The shovels, hoes, and trowels you find at most hardware stores are made from low-carbon mild steel, typically in the range of 1018 to 1020 steel. It is cheap to produce and easy to stamp into shapes, but it is soft. It bends under pressure. It dulls quickly, and it does not hold an edge. That is why your garden hoe feels useless after one season of hitting rocks and roots. The Amish use high-carbon steel for their tool heads, typically in the range of 1070 to 1095. This steel contains significantly more carbon, which means it can be hardened and tempered to hold an edge far longer. It also also resists bending under the kind of lateral stress that garden tools face daily. Here is exactly what to look for. If you are sourcing steel for a tool head, look for 1080 or 1095 high carbon steel. You can buy flat bar stock from any metal supplier or online. For a garden hoe blade, you want a piece roughly 6 inches wide, 4 inches tall, and 3/16 of an inch thick. For a hand trowel, a piece about 3 inches wide and 8 inches long works well. Now, if you do not have a forge, and most of us do not, here is the practical workaround the Amish taught me. Many Amish tool makers do not forge from raw stock for simple garden tools. Instead, they repurpose high carbon steel from old leaf springs, old files, and old saw blades. A worn out flat mill file is already 1095 steel. An old car or truck leaf spring is typically 5160 steel, which is excellent for shovels and hoes. These items are often free from auto shops, flea markets, or farm auctions. I picked up a set of 4 leaf springs at a farm auction in Holmes County for $3 total, and those 4 springs gave me enough steel for 2 hoes, a spade head, and a garden fork. The key is knowing how to identify high carbon steel. Here is a simple test. Take a bench grinder or even a handheld angle grinder and touch the steel to the wheel. Low carbon mild steel throws long, smooth orange sparks. High carbon steel throws shorter sparks that burst and fork at the tips, almost like tiny fireworks. That forking pattern tells you there is enough carbon in the steel to harden properly. If it sparks long and smooth, pass on it. One honest note: if you are buying new flat stock, make sure it is specifically labeled as high carbon. Do not assume. I made that mistake once, bought a piece of hot rolled steel that looked right but turned out to be 1018 mild steel. The hoe I made from it was dull within 2 months. Now that you have the right steel, here is where things get really interesting, because shaping and hardening the metal is what gives a tool its backbone. If you have access to a forge or even a coal fire, you can heat the steel to cherry red, which is roughly 1400 to 1500 degrees Fahrenheit, and shape it with a hammer on an anvil. But here is the approach I use, and it is one I learned directly from watching an Amish neighbor who makes most of his tools with nothing more than an angle grinder, a drill press, and a simple charcoal fire. For a garden hoe, start with your 6x4 inch piece of high carbon steel. Use an angle grinder to cut the rough shape, then grind the bottom edge to a bevel, about a 20-degree angle on one side only, like a chisel edge. This is the cutting edge that slices through soil and roots. The bevel should extend about a ½ inch up from the bottom. Now here's the critical part: the heat treatment. Build a charcoal fire in a simple fire pit or even a barbecue grill. Use a hairdryer or a small blower aimed at the base to get the coals hot enough. You need the steel to reach that cherry red color, a medium red glow, visible in shade but not blinding bright. Hold the blade in the fire with long-handled tongs for about 5 to 7 minutes, turning it so it heats evenly. Once it is glowing an even cherry red, quench it quickly in a bucket of used motor oil or vegetable oil, not water. Water cools too fast and can crack high carbon steel. Oil cools it just fast enough to harden the steel without making it brittle. You will hear a loud hiss and the oil may flame briefly, so do this outdoors and have a metal lid ready to smother the bucket if needed. After quenching, the steel is very hard but also very brittle. It would shatter if you hit a rock, so now you temper it. Clean the blade with sandpaper until you can see bare metal. Place it in your kitchen oven at 400 degrees Fahrenheit for 1 hour. Then turn off the oven and let the blade cool inside slowly. This draws back just enough hardness to make the steel tough and flexible while keeping the edge sharp. After tempering, the steel surface should show a straw yellow to light brown color, which tells you the temper is in the right range. If you are in a humid climate zone 7 through 9 along the Gulf Coast or Southeast, apply a thin coat of linseed oil to the finished blade before storage. High carbon steel will rust faster than stainless, so a little protection goes a long way. The third piece of this system system is the one the Amish spend the most time thinking about, and it is the piece most of us ignore completely, the handle. I used to think a handle was a handle. As long as it fit the socket and felt okay in my hand, that was good enough. The Amish taught me that the handle is actually the most important part of the tool for daily comfort and long-term durability. Here is what you need to know. The Amish almost exclusively use white ash or hickory for garden tool handles. Both are American hardwoods with exceptional strength to weight ratios and natural shock absorption. Ash is lighter and has a bit more flex, making it ideal for hoes and rakes. Hickory is denser and tougher, better for shovels and forks where you are prying and leveraging. Now here is the detail that changed everything for me. Grain orientation. When you look at the end grain of a tool handle, the growth rings should run parallel to the direction of force. On a hoe, that means the rings run front to back, not side to side. When the grain is oriented correctly, the wood flexes with the force instead of against it. When the grain is perpendicular, the wood is far more likely to snap under stress. Go look at any cheap store-bought handle right now, and I will bet you the grain runs in the wrong direction. They are cut for speed and economy, not strength. The Amish split their handle blanks from straight grain logs by hand, following the natural grain lines. This means every fiber in the handle runs the full length of the tool unbroken. That is why an Amish handle flexes under load instead of cracking. A handle with run out, where the grain angles off to the side, will eventually fail at that weak point. For dimensions, a standard garden hoe handle should be about 54 to 60 inches long and roughly 1¼ inches in diameter. A shovel handle runs about 46 to 48 inches. Shape the grip end with a slight swell or knob so your hand does not slide off during use. Sand the handle to 220 grit, smooth enough that it will not splinter, but not so polished that it feels slippery when your hands are wet. If you are buying handle blanks rather than splitting your own, look for handles specifically labeled as straight grain hickory or ash. Check both ends. If you can see the grain running off to one side, put it back. I check every handle now before I buy, and I reject probably half of what I see on the shelf. If you are picking up what I am putting down and you want the full system I use for building a pest-free, chemical-free garden using these same Amish principles, now what I'm showing you today is just one piece of a much bigger picture. The Amish don't do anything in isolation. Every technique connects to a whole system, and that system is what makes the difference between a garden that struggles and a garden that practically takes care of itself. I spent years learning how it all fits together, and I've put everything into a step-by-step guide called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol. It's got the complete 5 defense layers, the companion planting charts, the 4-bed crop rotation, all of it laid out day by day, so you're never guessing what to do next. If you want to go deeper than what we can cover in one video, there are 2 easy ways to get it. You can click the link right down there in the description below this video, or if you're watching this on your TV or your computer, just grab your phone, open up the camera, and point it at the QR code on screen right now. It'll take you straight to the guide. No searching, no typing anything in. All right, let's keep going. Now let me show you exactly how to attach the head to the handle, because this joint is where most commercial tools fall apart. There are 2 main methods, and the Amish use both depending on the tool type. For socket tools like shovels and garden forks, the head has a conical socket that the handle wedges into from the top. Taper the end of your handle to match the socket cone. Fit it snugly by hand first, then drive it in with a wooden mallet. Here's the key. Once the handle is seated, drill a 3/16 inch hole through the socket and handle together and drive in a steel pin or rivet. Most cheap tools skip this step entirely. They rely on friction alone, and that is why the head wobbles loose after a season. The pin locks the head permanently. For eye tools like hoes and mattocks, the head has an oval eye that the handle passes through from the bottom. Slide the head onto the handle from the tip end and push it up to the shoulder. Then insert a hardwood wedge into a saw curve cut in the top of the handle. The wedge expands the wood inside the eye, creating a mechanical lock. Use a wedge made from the same hardwood as the handle, about 2 inches long and a 1/2 inch wide at the top, tapering to a point. Drive it in with a few firm hammer taps. Some Amish tool makers add a small metal cross wedge perpendicular to the wood wedge for extra security. I want to be straight. each bale with you. If the fit between the eye and the handle is sloppy, no amount of wedging will save it. The handle should fit the eye snugly before wedging. If there is more than a 1/16 of an inch of gap on any side, reshape the handle or find a better match. I learned this the hard way when I forced a loose handle into a hoe eye, wedged it tight, and had the head fly off 3 weeks later while I was chopping a stubborn weed. That is not just frustrating, it is dangerous. Now here is where the ongoing maintenance comes in, and this is the part that separates tools that last 5 years from tools that last 50. The Amish do not treat tool care as an occasional chore. It is built into the rhythm of the season, just like planting and harvesting. After every use, they wipe the metalhead clean of soil. Wet soil left on high carbon steel overnight is a recipe for rust. A quick wipe with a rag is all it takes. Once a month during the growing season, they touch up the cutting edge with a flat mill file. 10 to 15 strokes on the bevel side of a hoe blade keeps it cutting clean through soil instead of pushing against it. A sharp hoe is faster, easier on your body, and does less damage to your plants. Most of us never sharpen our hoes, and that is like trying to cut bread with a butter knife. You end up working 3 times as hard for a worse result. At the end of each season, clean all metal surfaces thoroughly, dry them completely, and apply a light coat of boiled linseed oil or paste wax. Some Amish families keep a 5-gallon bucket filled with coarse sand mixed with used motor oil in the barn. After cleaning, they plunge the tool head into the oiled sand a few times. The abrasive sand scours off any remaining soil or light rust, and the oil coats the surface in one motion. It takes about 5 seconds per tool. I set up the same bucket in my garage 3 years ago, and it is one of the simplest, most effective maintenance habits I have ever adopted. For the handle once a year, give it a light sanding with 220 grit sandpaper to remove any surface roughness or raised grain. Then apply the treatment I will share with you in a minute. Let me walk you through some patterns I've noticed over the years, things I used to do that the Amish approach corrects. The first pattern is buying the cheapest tool available. I did this for years because I figured a shovel is a shovel, but a $12 shovel made from stamped mild steel with a machine-turned handle of unknown wood is engineered to be replaced. The Amish spend more time up front, not necessarily more money, because they are using salvage steel and wood they split themselves. But even if you buy quality materials, spending $30 on steel and a good ash handle gives you a tool that outlasts 20 of those $12 shovels. The second pattern is ignoring the handle completely. Most of us never look at the grain, never oil the wood, never check the fit and the eye or socket. We treat the handle as disposable and are surprised when it cracks. The Amish check their handles at the start of every season, looking for cracks, checking the wedge tightness, and refinishing the wood. 5 minutes of inspection prevents a failure in the middle of a workday. The third pattern is never sharpening anything. I went probably 15 years without sharpening a single garden tool. I did not even realize hoes were supposed to be sharp. The Amish sharpen their hoes, shovels, and even their garden spades regularly. A sharp edge cuts through roots and compacted soil instead of bouncing off, which means less effort and less strain on the handle, the head, and your body. If your tool feels like it is fighting the ground, it is probably dull. The fourth pattern is storing tools outdoors or leaning them against a wall where they collect moisture. I used to leave my tools in a wheelbarrow next to the garden all season. The Amish hang every tool on a wall rack in a covered barn or shed, heads up, off the ground. Hanging them prevents moisture from pooling on the metal and keeps the handles dry. If you take nothing else from this video, start hanging your tools off the ground in a dry space. It is the single easiest change you can make. Now here is the technique I promised you at the beginning, the one I learned from an Amish family that I have never found in any tool catalog, woodworking book, or gardening guide. And it is the reason their wooden handles look and feel the same after 30 years as they did the day they were made. Once a year at the end of the growing season, after the tools are cleaned and put away, they apply a mixture of beeswax and boiled linseed oil to every wooden handle. Here is the exact recipe. Melt 2 tablespoons of pure beeswax in a small tin can set inside a pot of simmering water, basically a double boiler. Once the wax is liquid, stir in about half a cup of boiled linseed oil, not raw linseed oil, boiled. which has drying agents that help it cure. Stir until the mixture is smooth and uniform. While the mixture is still warm and liquid, brush it onto the wooden handle with a cheap paintbrush or even a rag. Work it into the grain, especially around the area where the handle meets the tool head, because that joint is where moisture penetrates first. Apply a generous coat and let it soak in for about 15 to 20 minutes. Then wipe off any excess with a clean rag and let the handle sit overnight in a dry space. What this does is remarkable. The beeswax fills the wood pores and creates a water-resistant barrier on the surface, while the linseed oil penetrates deep into the grain and keeps the wood fibers supple and flexible. Together, they prevent the two things that kill wooden handles: moisture absorption that causes swelling, cracking, and rot, and drying out that makes the wood brittle and prone to snapping. A handle treated this way once a year will not crack, will not splinter, and will not dry out. That is why a 70-year-old Amish garden fork still has a handle that feels solid and alive in your hand, instead of gray, brittle, and ready to snap. I have been using this treatment on all my handles for 3 seasons now. The difference is immediate. The wood feels warmer and smoother in your hand. It sheds water instead of absorbing it. And the handles have a rich, honey-colored patina that actually looks better with age. 10 minutes of work once a year. That is all it takes. One note: dispose of any rags used with boiled linseed oil by spreading them flat to dry outdoors before throwing them away. Bunched up linseed oil rags can generate heat and spontaneously combust. I know that sounds dramatic, but it is a real safety concern. Lay them flat on concrete, let them dry stiff, then discard. If what I shared today changed how you think about the tools in your garage, it's called the 30-Day Amish Pest-Proof Garden Protocol, and it's everything I've learned from my Amish neighbors over the last 3 decades, organized into a simple day-by-day plan you can start this season. It covers the full 5 defense layers to build a garden that defends itself from the soil up. It's got the complete 4-bed crop rotation system that stops disease and pests before they ever get a foothold. And it includes a companion planting field guide, so you know exactly what to grow next to what and why. Now, there are 2 easy ways to grab it. The first way is to click the link in the description right below this video. Just scroll down a little and you'll see it. The second way, if you're watching on a television or a computer screen, is to take out your phone, open up your camera like you're going to take a picture, and hold it up to the QR code you see on screen right now. A little link will pop up at the top of your phone screen. Just tap that and it'll bring you right to the guide. No typing, no searching. Either way works. I think it's the best investment you can make in your garden this year. That is what I have learned from Amish toolmakers about building garden tools that last a lifetime instead of a single season. Choose high carbon steel and test it with a grinder before you invest your time. Harden and temper the blade so it holds an edge through years of real use. Select straight grain, ash, or hickory and orient the grain with the force. Pin or wedge the head properly so it never wobbles loose. Sharpen regularly. Store your tools dry and off the ground, and once a year spend 10 minutes with beeswax and linseed oil. If you tried any of this, or if you have your own family tools with a story behind them, I would love to hear about it in the comments. Tell me what your oldest garden tool is and how it has held up. And if you want more of these deep dives into traditional methods that actually work, hit subscribe. I've got a lot more coming. Thanks for spending time with me today. I will see you in the next one.